Peace and namaste, everybody. Welcome. I'm Peter Panagore, MDiv, a near death experiencer times two. This channel is about mysticism, and it's for people who've had spiritually transformative experiences who wish to learn more from the ancient and modern mystical geniuses worldwide who taught about mysticism from their own experiences, not from books, and who practiced stillness. Be here now. Why learn from the ancient ones? Why not just pick up a modern book? Well, you can pick up a modern book, but because ancient mystical books that remain in print for thousands of years, like the Yoga Sutras, or hundreds of years, such as the poetry of Rumi, endure because inside of them are nuggets of gold to help us on our journey. Modern teachers such as Thich Nhat Hanh, Eckhart Tolle, and Adyashanti exhibit the historical and documented signs of enlightenment: humility, compassion, kindness, authenticity, and especially with self honesty, the opposite of which, at its extreme, self righteousness, gaslighting, and coercive control. Destructive spiritual teachers are wolves in sheep's clothing, to quote the mystical Jesus. Today, how to spot false and real spiritual teachers and the Gospel of Thomas, saying 34. But first, let's do a little breath work and mental focus meditation practice, also known as the prayer of stillness and the prayer of listening, the quieting of the thoughts to be in the stillness of the now. And let's do 3 ohms, vibrating our heart chakras, feeling our larynx, driving the right up into your skull, right up into your brow chakra. And then we'll take a few breaths, follow my breath. We're going to deep breathe into our bellies, bring ourselves into the now. Welcome, everyone. A quick say hello to whoever else is here before we dive inside here. Jimmy, Diane, Kittia, Barbara, Bridget, Martha, Tom, my neighbor, David, Nancy, Sean, and Primary Feathers. Hi, everybody. Welcome. All right, so let's drive ourselves inward with a few Om breaths. If you'd like to learn more about how to practice, come join us on Mondays and Wednesdays live on YouTube for our meditation time, and on Tuesdays on Zoom for our Kriya practice. Links at peterpanagore.love. So, how to spot faults and real spiritual teachers. Did you ever notice how some people, they turn their head sideways when they talk to you, as if they don't want their full face to be seen? How to spot faults and real spiritual teachers. My spiritually transformed friend was taken in by a narcissist, a somewhat famous spiritual teacher who taunted, threatened, took control, domineered, swore, shouted angrily, and made demands. When she, finally seeing through his false persona, decided to leave him, he made it difficult for her. His self-righteous behavior lorded his spiritual advancement like a weapon. He regularly one-ups his students, bragging about his fasting, vegetarianism, veganism, meditation life, guru lineage, and Central American ayahuasca retreat. In the church, they call this spiritual pride. My soul's better than your soul. I'm much higher than you. You're so low, you can't even see the light without me. Sometimes the spiritual teacher is narcissistic. Not always, but sometimes they are. And I wonder, have you ever met any spiritual person who, and it doesn't have to be a teacher, it can just be a braggadocio, someone who lords their spirituality like a weapon at you. I am so much better than you in my spiritual life. If you've met anybody like that or had an encounter with a teacher like that, tell me in the comments. Yes, it is possible to become enlightened. And I'll say that again. It is possible to become enlightened. Enlightenment is a state of spiritual awakening and understanding that is beyond words. It's an experience of profound insight and noetic knowledge, also called wisdom, that language cannot express. It's a state of being beyond the physical realm, transcending the limitations of language, rationality, and the physical world, that results in living love and light in the world for no self gain. Enlightenment is a process. It happens at once. You can be enlightened as a divine grace. This happens all the time. And the flash of Kundalini, the flash of awakening. But don't mistake the flash of awakening for a permanent state of being. It's a permanent state of reorientation, a permanent state of seeing the world in a new way. It's a permanent state of a new self, but it's not a permanent state of the divine itself. That leaves a lingering perfume inside your soul, but that has to be worked on. It requires dedication and commitment and an open mind to achieve and maintain a level of enlightenment. It comes through grace with a capital G, divine input into the soul that's way beyond the rational, way beyond the capacity of the human mind to comprehend. It is purely experiential, and it destroys self. At its highest levels, the self is destroyed, is then reassembled into another reborn way of being in the world. It dissembles the idea of who we are completely. And that's really how you tell the main difference. It takes work, and it takes deep psychological self-examination. You have to, when you see yourself as you actually are, you then can't help but see the false self for who it is. And in that situation, one dives deep into one's own self-examination, because we remain human after an enlightening experience. We remain human and we live in that balance point between the worlds. And because we live in the balance point between the world, we still have to do the deep psychological examination of self. Because there are wounds inside of people that leave a residual that need work, even after a brilliant illumination, even after seeing oneself for who one truly is. Awakening is just the beginning of the journey. Enlightenment, or the experience of the end of false self, unity, union, kundalini, satori, samadhi, to name a few, heaven, happens by grace. Suddenly and unexpectedly the gate opens, and when it does, the after gifts come, and the after gift of humility becomes manifest. Enlightenment requires deep self examination, but once one sees oneself for who one is, the comparison of the ultimate to the limited, how could you not be humble? It's impossible. Real spiritual teachers exhibit humility, compassion, grace, kindness, courage, and understanding. They don't teach what they don't know from experience. They only teach what they know from experience. If you listen to Jesus, especially in the Gospel of Thomas, or if you look at the other four Gospels through the lens of the Gospel of Thomas, you can hear that Jesus is actually talking about his own experience whenever he talks about heaven. Rumi, the truth is the same. Lao Tzu, Chuang Tzu, all of them. Meister Eckhart, Teresa of Avila, Abba Ibn, they don't speculate or hypothesize. They're not believers. And importantly, they don't demand you to believe with them. They're not trying to convince you of anything. The disciples were asking, and he was trying to tell. They don't force you to believe with them, because when you are forced to believe with them, they have power over you. And this is the opposite of power over you. Enlightenment is the end of power over you. It's the recognition of the reality of the truth of yourself that is already you. They carry the light with them to different degrees. They understand that head knowledge is helpful, but that knowledge is not wisdom. Wisdom comes from direct mystical experience. And if you've had a transformative spiritual experience, it's left a lodging in you, a mark of wisdom that you can draw on in order to deepen your spiritual life, but also to live your physical life. None of us get the whole picture here. The whole picture is way too big for the human brain to comprehend here. But one can experience the end of self here. And when that happens, it changes one's perspective of oneself and of everyone else around you. True mystical enlightened teachers don't extrapolate. They don't begin to imagine more than they know. They don't make stuff up. Once one experiences union, singleness, oneness, when one loses oneself, even for only a moment, then one genuinely sees. Enlightened people are still human and experience emotions. They're in this place between the worlds, in this balanced place. Yes, there's more light inside of them, but they're still in the world. But enlightened people witness themselves from the inside. They understand themselves that they are not their bodies, that they're not their emotions or their thoughts or their minds, because they have touched their original self fully and without speculation. They know and they see and they treat others in the same way. And that, let that be a sign unto you when you are treated the way they treat themselves. They are imperfect, fully human, with faults and frailties, and yet themselves they point at the perfect with a capital P. In the Christian language, they are fully human and divine. They live in these two places, and they don't project their ideas demanding that you follow them. Authentic spiritual teachers of enlightenment aim at the eternal, not the mortal. They seek to manifest light inside themselves so that you can manifest light inside yourself. They seek to manifest light inside themselves and not objects or self-desires. They see, hear, feel, taste, smell, experience their own eternal nature firsthand. And they live non-attached to their false selves. And so, like the Dalai Lama, treats everyone with serenity and welcome, peace and non-judgment. They live for heaven, not for earth. But strangely, living on earth becomes less painful when one lives this way. Real spiritual teachers, they do the hard work of self-examination. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And once one sees oneself for who one is, it's impossible to have an unexamined life, because one sees oneself as an other. Enlightened people are humbled by their enlightenment because they experienced the power of the beloved and the smallness of the false self. If a blind person leads a blind person, then they both will fall into the pit, said Jesus. And I've lost my space again, of course. Oh my gosh, this crazy teleprompter. There we are. I'm going to grab it here again. Why are you doing this to me? All right. If a blind person leads a blind person, both will fall into the pit, into a hole, said Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. When the blind lead the blind, they both fall into a hole. Poisonous false self-positivity is a sign of spiritual bypassing, of the inner deep work of self-examination and the shadows of one's self and the truth of one's human character and nature. False positivity. You know them by their fruits. Spiritual narcissists, they are good liars. Be aware and beware. They're also very good at knowing what sells. They know and can see the frailties of desire of humans and sell them what they don't need. Blind false gurus and spiritual influencers, they lack any real spiritual wisdom. Instead, they rely on pretenses, memes, and appearances, using beliefs, ideas, self-righteousness, and knowledge to assert control and pretend to be who they are not. Some false teachers aren't narcissists. They're just unripe fruit who mistake belief speculation, assumption, and knowledge for wisdom. And they recognize that it sells. Now, wisdom only comes one way, and that's through experience. Direct spiritual transformation, direct mystical experience. That's where wisdom comes from. And each of us here, whatever our mystical experience, whatever we've had that's transformed us spiritually, changing the course of our lives, carrying out a portion of wisdom. That's what that is. When the course of your life is changed by a mystical experience, you're carrying the portion of wisdom and you're living through the wisdom that you were given in your experience. It's what makes you curious. It is what makes us intuitive about the divine. Listen to your intuition in silence inside yourself. Ultimately, take responsibility for your own spiritual journey because it is interior and no one can walk it for you. We can walk it together. But really, truly, what's a false guru? A false guru claims to be a spiritual teacher or a leader, but is actually motivated by selfish desires or a desire for power or self-aggrandizement or or a weak self-identity that needs to be empowered by others' belief in them. False gurus use manipulative tactics to control and exploit their followers for gain. In addition, false gurus, false teachers often lack spiritual knowledge or wisdom, and they may lead their followers down dangerous paths. I mean, in the extreme, you get your Jim Joneses and you give up everything you own and you move to a compound somewhere and really it's all about the Rolls Royces that the guru owns, 15 Rolls Royces or a jet. And meanwhile, they aim their pointy finger at themselves and not at the moon. Don't look at the finger, look at the moon. It's not about the person. It's about the divine. Now, how can a person determine if a guru is false? Observe their behaviors. Listen to what they say and understand that their teachings are used to determine and understand that their teachings can be used to determine if a guru is false. For example, a false guru may focus more on gaining power or money than helping their followers grow spiritually, interiorly. They may also focus on their own needs rather than the needs of their followers. They may brag about their spiritual prowess. A false guru, they're going to make false promises that are too good to be true or give advice based on something other than a genuine spiritual experience. Signs of a false teacher, lording it over people. Spiritual bypassing, which is a defense mechanism, and spiritually superficial posturing to avoid examining emotional issues. They use it as a shield to hide behind. They pretend they're super spiritual. Belief. Those who have been in the union experience, they're really not believers. Look at Jesus, breaking the rules all the time, eating on the Sabbath, healing on the Sabbath, as the stories go. He didn't give a care about beliefs. False teachers lack direct experience, or if they have experience, they blow it up out of proportion. And because they have this experience, they think they understand everything, and they don't. They can't. It's not possible. Selfishness. They're controlling, spiritually self-righteous, spiritually competitive. My spirituality is better than yours. Pseudo-spirituality is used as a mechanism for abuse, for control. It's very narcissistic. They judge. And where narcissists are concerned, there's no shortcut to empathy. You can see through empathy if you look long enough. False empathy. That's what I meant. You can see through false empathy if you look long enough. So beware of false teachers who waste time in your life. They're predators at worst and misguided influencers at best. Pay attention to what they teach. Listen, watch, use your reason, observe. Don't check your brain at the door, and you'll see for yourself. And as for me, I'm called a false teacher, a false prophet, a liar, crazy, deceived, idiotic, dangerous, and more in hundreds of comments on my podcast interviews, not this channel, but where I get interviewed. Because I don't follow belief systems. It's the Christian evangelicals and the atheists. When they come here, of course, I never answer them. Well, when they come to my channel, I block them because I want to keep this space a space for speaking freely for you. It doesn't bother me that I'm attacked. I've been attacked my whole life. And besides, I know who I am. And I know where I'm from. And I know where I'm going. All the people who attack me they're all believers or non-believers, experiencers, near-death experiencers who comment on those channels. Well, it feels like I'm meeting my long-lost and well-loved cousins. Whenever I meet a true spiritual teacher, that's what it's like. Meeting someone I already know. The light really does know itself. And when one takes the time to focus and end thought, to be in the now, however you practice that, whatever technique, you aid your own enlightenment. You touch into the stillness inside yourself. Take the time to think for yourself and to consider the implications of what you're being taught, or you may end up in a place that's not very beneficial for you. Jesus, in this saying, he gives us a reminder to use our judgment and to think critically about what you're being taught and what you're learning. Some false teachers, they're simply unripe fruit, while others are poisoned apples. So pick wisely. You have this original self inside of you. Seek there and find what you already are, which can't be contained in words, but can be lived and deepened. And it is made of light, which is who and what you are. Peace. Thanks for spending time with me this morning. I hope this helped you. If you've ever been in a situation where you've had an abusive spiritual teacher, you've been in an abusive situation of any kind, someone asserting coercive control, but worse in spirituality. Those teachers who teach hate, those teachers who teach anger or violence. Tell me about it in the comments. Self-righteous teachers, tell me about it in the comments. I do want to thank you for your financial support. I couldn't be here without you. I'm working on the movie. I passed in the 3rd chapter this week. Maybe there'll come a point at which I don't need support. I can continue my work for God without asking. But I thank you because you're making it possible. Anyway, I'm waiting to hear from the producers. They're going to read it this week, and I'll know whether it's accepted or whether it needs editing. We'll find out. I'll let you know. Thanks for going to peterpanagore.love. Look for the red heart there. I'm available for private spiritual consultations. I help NDEers readjust. I do pastoral counseling by appointment with intuition and divine grace through mystical experience and understanding since 1986. peterpanagore.love. And don't forget, we have Mystic Tea Salon, which is for spiritually transformed people and seekers who have the intuition to understand they are more than they see. Come meet people like yourself and talk. I'm the host. About 40 people come every week, and I learn something every week. This is not just, I'm not just a host, okay? I'm also the student. By the way, I've always considered myself a student. I still consider myself a student. Wisdom from experience is to be shared. That's what Mystic Tea Salon is for. Humility, compassion, and kindness are our rules. And the link's in the description. I know because this week I put it there. Namaste and peace. Let's go check out the chat. Thanks for liking and subscribing. I hope this was helpful. I'll see if it was. I'm going to unplug this guy here and get that cord out of the way. Drop the mic down, take my glasses off. Hey, Dios. Sarah, always send love, but know when to send and keep a safe distance. That's totally true. You don't need to stay with an abuser of any kind. You can love them from afar and in safety. I'm glad to hear you say that. Very helpful, Peter. Thanks, Diane. Thank you. Always, spiritual journey is always within ourselves. It is always within yourself. There is no other way. Which is, why do you think Jesus had such a hard time telling his disciples about it? Because it's ineffable, and it's subjective, and you can't say it, and you can't really teach it. You can only be in it. And that's really what he was teaching, which is what they all teach. The inward way. All the great teachers. Aquagino, thank you for this video. You're welcome, Aqua. Eves, financial. I did not find the fish, bro, with the coin in it. Hey. I don't know what you mean by that, Eves, but yeah, I'm trying to create financial independence for myself so that I can do my job without ever having to ask anyone for anything ever again. I want ultimate independence because then I won't be, what? Well, this is the best gig I've ever had. And when I was in the church, I had to not say lots of things. And when I was on TV, I had a lot more freedom, but I couldn't say certain things. Here, I can speak my mind and my heart. But I'd like to be able to do that independently. I'd love to be able to just put out material, just keep putting out material, keep putting it out, and not worry about it ever again. Yeah, because I live in the world. I do. I got to put bread on the table and pay the bills, and that's the truth. Thank you, Roberts. Thank you, PL. Hey, Sean, dealing with this right now in a slightly different way. Interesting. Nice, grasshopper. Oh, thank you. Thank you. What's the Master Poe? Thank you, Master Poe. I'm a fan. I was a fan of Kung Fu, for sure. Sarah, Peter, I wonder if you could help me remember my 35 minutes of missing time from a potential NDE. Maybe we could talk about it. We certainly could look at it. I've spent my entire life going back over my NDE in my mind. And I've done that because on occasion, more parts of it open up. So my experience of my near-death experience is that I didn't come back with 99.99999% of it. I came back with a small amount of it that could fit inside my brain, which is very tiny. So I've spent my life trying to review it and review it and review it. And in my meditation life, that's where it really happens. Suddenly I'll remember something that I'd forgotten, or when my dad died recently in the past couple of years. When he came back to me, I remembered his end of life that I had forgotten. I was prevented from seeing. So maybe we can give it a try if you want to. I'm game if you are. The fish is where Peter found the coin to pay the Caesar tax. Oh, right. Thank you. Yes, thank you. I didn't understand. That's yes. Amen to that. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that very much. Hey, Jay David. Peter, are you willing to comment on Joel Osteen? No, I'm not going to call out anybody by name. I won't call out anybody by name. I won't. But I will say this, that Jesus never taught the gospel of prosperity. Jesus taught the gospel of abundance. And abundance is abundance of love. Prosperity that he taught, which isn't the word used, isn't about money here or things. It's about the abundance of the divine. The prosperity is the end of self and the gold of the gold nuggets of shining light that pile into us. The sand, the golden sand that piles into us, that transforms us. The gospel of prosperity aims at the world. Jesus' teaching on abundance aims at heaven. That's really the difference. And if you want to be prosperous, sure, I want to be prosperous. But I'm not asking God to make me prosperous. I'm working my tail off. That's what I'm doing. I don't think that, as some of those televangelists do, if you give 10% as a seed money to my ministry, God will make you rich. That's just BS. Bravo, Sierra. You know, when a person begins to see their human life as one of many lives, not just in reincarnation, but to see one's previous lives and understand that the through line through all of those is the higher self, one begins to aim at the higher self than at the through line of, than at the incarnations themselves. And that's true in this life, true right now. Prosperity is great. I hate poverty. I hate to see poverty. I don't hate many things in the world, but I hate poverty. I've worked a lot with the poor in my entire life. It's a devastating thing to be poor. I wish for prosperity for everybody. I would love everyone to be prosperous enough not to suffer the indignities and pains of poverty, which are terrible. But I don't preach the prosperity gospel. The prosperity I preach, I teach, I live is the abundance of the storehouse of love that transcends this life, precedes it, is inside of it, and is awaiting us again. That's where it really is. Hope that helps, brother. Hey, Robert, Peter, speaking of fish with a coin in its mouth, speaks of a verse of encounter in scripture. Thanks, Robert. I forgot about that. I appreciate that too. And Yves, thanks for straightening me out. I don't mind being straightened out. I don't mind being critiqued. I don't. It's how I learn. And I definitely am human. I tons of mistakes. Man of peace. Ever consider hosting an on-site seminar to bring in some cash? I'd attend. Oh, yeah, I might. I could do something like that. All right. That's a decent idea. An on-site seminar, an in-person seminar. Interesting. We talked about a retreat. but it was so far away for everybody. Anyway, I'll think about it, man, of peace. Um, Tom, experience is my best teacher. I love hearing someone preach from the experience as opposed to just reading about it. Thanks, Tom. Hey, Sarah, very helpful. Thank you. Brother Ed, my dear brother Peter, by keeping your donation basket at your door, you allow us to honor your messages. Thank you. Thank you. And so, one of the things I did, okay, so I'm not a 501c3 on purpose, okay? I don't have a foundation on purpose. I have an S corp because that's how I worked when I was at the TV station. The First Radio Parish Church of America at the TV station contracted with my S corp for my tax benefit. But I I want to work for my money. I really do. That's why I have an S corp, and I thank you for the donations. And they are donations, and you can't deduct them, and legally in the United States because I'm an S corp, or I own an S corp. But I do leave a basket by the door, and I thank you, Ed, to allow opportunity to honor the messages. I really can't do this without your help. I'd be working at Walmart or something, you know. Um, Maybe not Walmart, but not in the church. That's for sure. That's for sure. And that's what I know how to do. Um, yes, brother Ed, says Janet. Thanks, Janet. No, you cannot hate Francesco of Assisi. No, I don't hate Francis of Assisi. I don't hate Francis. That kind of poverty. That's a very different kind of poverty. That's a very different kind of poverty. But I spent my life working with the homeless. I spent my life working with the abject poor. I spent a lot of my life um, working with the underemployed, and I've seen the devastation it brings. The economically disadvantaged. Those who take a vow of poverty, Trappist monks, Franciscans, I've worked with them too. I spent a little time, not much time, but a little time at the Franciscan house in Boston, just to when I was working in the New Haven homeless shelters. Uh, and I hung out with the Franciscans, and they took vows of poverty, and I love those guys. And no, I love St. Francis of Assisi. That man had it going on. You're quite right about that. Um, your messages make me rich in ways when I was so impoverished previously. I attempt to give back. Thank you, Kristen. You've been a very kind and generous supporter. Thanks. Diane, retreat in Maine. Yes. Well, we talked about having a retreat, and maybe I looked for a place for a retreat. I mean, the best place to have a retreat is right here where I live. I live in a really great place. And I chose, okay, so one of the reasons why I chose to live in Booth Bay Harbor, because I knew I was never going to be able to afford to live here unless I was the minister. I could never live in a place like this. I could never have bought in here. And then eventually, of course, I did buy in because I found the house that was the small house, and that's the house we own was owned by the wardens. So the Marine wardens, 3 generations of Marine wardens owned our house. That's why we could afford it. Marine wardens, they work for the state. It's kind of like being a minister in terms of finance. And anyway, I had to live in the town. Long story anyway. So here I live among this incredible beauty. But there's also a lot of poverty here too. I don't want to make sure. I want to make sure that people understand it. Just because there's a lot of wealth where I live. There's a 50% of the children who go to the elementary school are all on free lunch and breakfast because they have no income or too small an income. Anyway, retreat in Maine. Maybe next year. That's what all my Jewish friends would say about going to Jerusalem. Maybe next year in Jerusalem. Maybe next year. Jacob's golden ladder gets slippery at the top, and many happy-go-lucky saint has made that long drop. Jesse Winchester. Oh, that's great. Jacob's ladder gets slippery at the top, and many a happy-go-lucky saint has made that long drop. Jesse Winchester said that. That's great. Yeah. With Pio. Oh, yeah. Padre Pio. I know him too. He's great. If you like coffee, you have cappuccino. I don't understand that. You're talking about Padre Pio. I don't know. All right, my friends. Thanks for being here this morning. Thanks for liking and subscribing. It really helps. The algorithm helps the message get out. And like I said, I passed in that piece to the producers coming up at the next couple of weeks. Not next week, in a few weeks from now, I'll be taking another week off. It's not really off, away from here, so that I can write the next chapter, assuming they accept this one. And if they accept this one, I only have two more to go. And then the movie moves ahead because I've completed my 2.5 year task for them. And then I'll have, maybe if it sells, if it goes ahead, I'll have some financial independence. But that's not my motivation for this. That's an after gift. The motivation is spreading the message of light and love and peace and near death experience and mystical transformation. Because it's not just going to be about my NDE, it's going to be about mystical experiences. That's what I've been writing about for the last several months. Mystical experiences that are not NDEs and how transformative they are. And in part, what I'd like to be able to do with this is not only show that NDE is a phenomenon, and that the divine light is real, is reality, and that there are tens and tens and tens of millions of NDEers, but there are many more people who've had these mystically transformative experiences, aka STEs, spiritually transformative experiences, that there are many, 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 many millions of more people like that, like I was before my NDE, like you are, many of us, many of you. And that NDE is just a type of mystical experience. Anyway, let's see what else is going on in the chat over here. Wanda, Boothbay is a working waterfront with hardworking folks doing their best to keep a roof over their heads. You got that right, Wanda. Boothbay Harbor, the town I live in, is a working waterfront, and a lot of my neighbors are working in the marine industry next door, down the street, up the road. Guys, people have traps stacked in their yard, lobster traps, off season, and there are people. It's a working waterfront. That's what makes this place. It's a blue collar town that's become white collar retiree, but we got a working waterfront, and every Memorial Day we list out all the people lost at sea from our town, and the list is long. It's pages and pages and pages long. And not so long ago, we lost the last one. It's a working waterfront here, hardworking folk. An online retreat would be easier and more accessible, Martha. That's true. Maybe I'll do that instead. Maybe I should do that. Eves, cappuccino is order of. Oh, cappuccino. Right, the cappuccino order, not the coffee. I'm like, the cappuccino. I don't drink milk. But you mean the cappuccino, the cappuccino, the cappuccinos who are capsians? Yeah. I know who you mean. I don't know a lot about them, but when I was in high school, I went to this Catholic school. We went to a Capuchin retreat center, and went on retreat. It was my first retreat, and those brothers had it going on. I haven't thought about that in a long, long time, that retreat. Thanks for bringing that in. And not the coffee cup. I thought you were talking about coffee. That's why I was confused. St. Francis, poor among poors. Yeah, he was the poor among poors. Sandy, your mind, your heart are blessings to the world. Thank you. It's thank you for saying that. But really, truly, not mine. Not mine. Yours, ours, the divine's. The blessing is the divine itself. So true spiritual teachers, they seek the divine itself, not self-aggrandizement or anything else. And as this happens, as will happen to you, and it's not just spiritual teachers, but the deeper you go into your own spiritual life, the deeper you dive inside yourself, the more open you become to grace, the more the divine becomes living inside you. In the Christian language, the Holy Spirit comes to dwell inside you. This is what happens. And then when that happens, it's a blessing to all. It's inside you. After you go to Hollywood, can we say you knew you when? You know, there is one of my producers who really wants me to move to California. And I don't have plans to move to California. When I visited my buddy's house, I got a buddy who lives in LA. His house was like half the size of mine on a tenth of the land. albeit in LA, worth 10 times as much as my house. Like I couldn't afford to buy there if I wanted to buy there. But I'll definitely visit. It's too rich for me. Um, but yeah, I I maintain my friendships. I get friends I've had my whole life. Um, I don't want. I'll talk about that maybe at Mystic Tea at the top of the hour. I was going to say something, but I'll wait. Mystical transformation. Mystical transformation. Maybe that's a title for the. I'm trying to think about title for, because not church has gone away. I'm rebranding mysticism. Maybe mystical transformation. Someone suggested mystical communion or mystic communion or mystic community. Let me know. I'll be doing a poll on this. I don't even know if it needs a name. I don't know. I live at the beach. I'm glad you caught us live. And you get to participate in the chat and the community, online community. I agree with Martha Peter. An online retreat would be easier. Okie dokie. I'm hearing you. Peter, you always emphasize the importance of experience over belief. I do. Is that a byproduct of your NDE? It is. Or was it something you came to over the years? It's a byproduct. It's definitely a byproduct. Beliefs. It's not just that I don't believe in the Bible or in the Christian tradition of theological interpretation. That's not it. Every human idea is a construct. We've made up cultures and belief systems, not just about religion, but about who we are as people. All of it's made up. It's all in our heads. It doesn't exist naturally in nature. Belief is a lens through which we see ourselves and the world and each other. But when I died, it was like the divine pulled out the motherboard from me and then sealed up the holes so that as if they had never been there before. And I no longer had the capacity for processing belief. And instead, what I have instead is knowing that I'm known by the knower. Not a belief in that at all. I, belief is a tool to get to the place of opening one's mind to the presence of the divine. But belief can also be a prison, a prison. There's no greater prison than the human mind. If you can convince somebody that something is true, and the experience of love, and the experience of compassion, and the experience of Booth Bay, but it was like a lot of people couldn't come because of the flights. It's expensive. Ducks, yes. Do you hear the ducks outside? They are wicked noisy. Okay, yeah, we've got 15 or 16. It's ice out here, and I got a pond next to me, and all the ducks came in today or yesterday. Yes, we definitely have ducks. The conduit, says Tom. Yes, become the conduit of the divine. That's what we are called to do. That's what Jesus was telling us. All right, last thing. J. David Holt. Could have also agreed if it was at the same time for those who cannot attend in person. Maine is very biased. It's a beautiful location. Yeah, Maine is wicked beautiful. All right. I love you guys. I will see you at the Mystic Tea Salon and we'll talk further about the meditation. But this year, I don't know. I got a lot going on. I've got I'll be speaking at the Parliament of Religious Leaders in Chicago, and IANS, and I got work to do to prepare for those. But I'm getting there. I am. All right. I'll see you soon. Peace and love, everybody. Peace and love. Oh, you keep losing me. See you in the tea room, everybody. Peace and love. Thanks for being here.